Hello and welcome to GIBS Business. In today's show, we meet Veli Ngubane of Avatar Digital Marketing Agency. We speak to him about digital solutions for an African continent. But first, the countdown to the FIFA World Cup in Brazil has begun. Glenn Silverman, the CIO of Investment Solutions, talks to us about the country's history, its people and economy.
By 1985, it's the end of military rule, and it's a key transition in the country away from military rule towards a democracy. 1986, that had frozen prices and wages to control inflation. They lift those, and inflation goes out of control. 2002, Lula da Silva wins the election, and currency and markets drop very sharply. He's a leftist. He's expected to bring in populist policies. In fact, he doesn't do that, and he is the savior. And he turns Brazil around, and in fact, from then on, Brazil actually goes through some very, very good times. So six important facts that I didn't know and I thought were interesting. Brazil overtook United Kingdom as the sixth largest world economy in 2011. It has slipped back one position. It's had more difficult times. The only Portuguese-speaking country in South America. It means it's very isolated, both by the sea on the one side, the Amazon on the other side, by the language that they speak. It also means I have a strong interest in Africa, but typically not South Africa. Angola, they speak Portuguese. Mozambique, you'll find a very strong presence of Brazilians there. The 7th largest mutual fund market in the world. I didn't expect to hear that. 11th largest oil producer, and by 2020 expected to be in the top 5. And approximately half of their country is covered in forests and jungles called the Amazon. And that is important. Why? Because they are rich in resources. So in terms of renewable freshwater resource, their global ranking is number 1. Forest, number 2, agricultural land, number 4. And I think those are very, very important. I remain a bull on Brazil because of those, because it is an asset play. It has rich assets, and I think those are amongst the most important, and add this oil that they found off the coast, etc.
On a recent trip to Brazil, Glenn was privileged to visit the Iguazu Falls, one of the great natural wonders of the earth, as well as the Itapu Dam, a hydroelectric dam on the Parana River located on the border of Brazil and Paraguay. For a long time, this was the largest power plant in the world.
It's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It's made up of 275 individual waterfalls. It is quite magnificent and very closely linked to this river. The Parana River that comes through is the Itapu Dam. That's obviously, they needed a strong flowing river. 7 kilometers along the dam. They used enough iron and steel to build 380 Eiffel Towers. It's one of the 7 modern wonders of the world, meeting 20% of Brazil's electricity needs, 75% of Paraguay's. It's a 50-50 joint venture, but obviously Brazil is just a little bit larger than Paraguay, and it's just less relevant to them. And then they diverted the Parana River. Now, one of the key themes that I've been presenting around the country for some period of time is this whole sustainability one. The fact that man is now a force of nature, and we saw it there. The ability to divert the 7th largest river in the world was actually unbelievable. It was quite mind-blowing. Now, Brazil as a country is a federation of 27 states. Very protectionist and interventionist. I would argue not very competitive in a world situation, not peer competitive. The capital is Brasilia. It's an artificially created capital. People weren't there naturally. But Sao Paulo, which is where we were, is both a city and a state, and it alone is equal to all the other 26 added together. One of the big benefits it does have is just off the shore there is all of this oil that sits in what they call the pre-salt, 4-kilometer odd underground, but very rich reserves. And in terms of a city, it's enormous, 20 million odd people, equal in size to the whole Australian continent. In fact, they say there are more helicopters used in that city than any other in the world. Why? Because the rich people can't fight through the traffic, and they use helicopters to get around.
Brazil faces major challenges with corruption. However, it is by no means as corrupt as many of the other dynamic market countries. With the World Cup around the corner, corruption has been seen to take a back seat.
3 reasons why Brazil's been so hard hit. I've already explained. They've come off a high base. Unemployment numbers very, very low. Urbanization, very, very urbanized. They're in a pretty bad neighborhood. Some horrible things happening in Argentina and other places around them. Pretty uncompetitive. They've made some policy errors, and corruption has come to the fore. Although, in fairness, in all the BRICS, they're always kind of there, and Brazil certainly doesn't score as one of the worst. But one of the key drivers of that economy, understandably, is commodities. It's a major part of their exports, and with global growth slowing, in particular China, slowing from 12% growth to 10 to 7.5%, it's impacted very negatively on Brazil. Government involvement is huge, as is corruption. And yet we sense an atmosphere of cooperation between business and government. Even when the corporates were criticizing government, they're saying, but they're on our side. A bit corrupt and they slow our lives down, but we're trying to, they're trying to do the best for the country. And I thought that was important. They pay tax at so many different levels. At the end of the month, you get a net debit into your account or credit into your account or debit out of your account, and that's how they know what the numbers are. It was quite a story. And then there are some similarities between South Africa and Brazil. We obviously are hosting in South Africa in 2010 our own World Cup. They are hosting one this year, and in 2 years' time they have an Olympic Games there as well. So, very exciting, very colorful, but there are negatives there. We spent some $3 billion estimated on our World Cup. They're going to spend almost 4 times that, which actually is not bad, because the ratio between South Africa and Brazil in so many aspects is 4-1. It's an important ratio. They've got 12 stadiums that they're going to build and refurbish, and that's going to cost $3.5 billion. The problem is going to be funded by Brazilian taxpayers. And as the best example, the capital, and it's always the capital where trouble sits, have built a new stadium for 70,000 people. However, the local club plays in 3rd division, and they normally attract 1,000 fans. So they're building this enormous, wonderful, big stadium, and we've seen some of this in countries before. And after the World Cup is obviously going to be no one around to fill it.
It's hard to believe that our World Cup was nearly 4 years ago. I caught up with Veli Ngubane, founder and creative director of Avatar, a marketing agency specializing in digital. I asked him how digital can solve some of the problems on the continent. Veli, welcome to studio.
Thank you for having me.
Can you give us your journey of how you came into this space?
Look, ours is one of an entrepreneurial startup that started in a bedroom in a township with almost no money but a dream. 3 years later, we're not doing too bad. We are growing, we're influencing, and we're innovating, and we're making our clients happy.
The term digital agency is a misnomer for some of us. Can you just give us a background on what does a digital agency do?
Well, actually, we're not positioned as a digital agency. We're an integrated agency with digital at the core. I think at the early stages of the development of our industry, there was digital versus traditional. Now, that has moved on. Ideas, above the line has reach. Digital doesn't have the numbers yet. So what we really do as an agency model is use the reach of above the line and convert it into digital. So our ideas are digitally based, but we use other platforms such as like TV, radio, billboards to drive people into digital. So that's the mix at the moment. So we're an integrated agency with digital at the core.
Last couple of years have seen quite a boom in terms of technology, mobile technology in Africa. What has that meant from an agency perspective?
The mobile phone is really the internet of Africa. We've got 80% penetration, and I think brands have an opportunity to use mobile because mobile, in developed countries, a cell phone is a cell phone to communicate to phone, but in a developing world, the cell phone is actually computing power. So I think the brands that use mobile to actually engage with their consumers and make their consumers' lives better, other brands. I mean, you look at the Kenyan example with M-Pesa, how it's changed millions of lives. So mobile really in Africa is the opportunity.
And where do you think we are in terms of the evolution of digital and the rest of the continent?
I think, look, we've got obvious problems of infrastructure. We have got problems of access, but I think it's growing. And I think mobile really is driving it. Innovations that really change people's lives. I mean, I was reading about a case in Nigeria where you can verify your medication, because a large number of the medication is actually fake medication. You can actually verify your medication using your mobile. The biggest thing is the drive of the youth market. You know, we've got the youngest continent, and in about a few years' time, we'll have the youngest technologically first consumer base, which I mean, these guys were born around technology, or they've seen technology, or they've got access to technology. So I think the big thing is the young market that's coming in that is really going to catalyze this boom.
We've seen a lot of the technology and innovation around the FMCG space, which in Africa is still dominated by multinationals. Now, you as an African entrepreneur in the digital space, what's the input that you bring in order to meet their problems and give them solutions?
And I think the banking sector is doing it quite well. You look at the innovation around the app technology to make your life easier. So I think the brands that really integrate with the problems of Africa, if I can say that. So the brands that have a look at the scope and say, how can I use technology and how can I use my brand influence to make the lives of these people better? Why? You want to build brand love. You know, the more you help out, the more you actually meet the consumer halfway, so that they have, one, a better standard of living, two, easier on a day-to-day basis, then you can create that brand love. So in any sector, whether FMCG, whether banking, the brands that use technology to really better the lives of people, this bringing brand love and access to their brand via technology will be the brand that succeeds at the end.
And do you find that as an African-based agency, you've got more of an understanding of those markets and how they use technology?
Look, I'll tell you the honest truth. We operate in 27 African countries and we are still learning, you know. And I think the mistake that other agencies did before us was to go into Africa and see it as a one big block. You know, now, every single country has its different dynamics, and they're changing dynamics. So you always have to have almost your ear on the ground, because a Nigeria a year ago is not the Nigeria today. A Kenya a year ago is not a Kenya today. So I think having such a continent with different development in terms of country to country, as an agency, you really need to be focused on each country and not have almost like a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's very difficult, because even in the advancement of technology, some countries are more advanced than others. So I think as a brand, you almost need to really, really tailor-make your message and make it bespoke for that country. And this blanket-fits-all type of strategy becomes a problem for agencies that are trying to go into the African continent.
And is there a difference in terms of the use of technology across the continent?
For sure, for sure. I mean, you look at the moment, it's been driven a lot by government interest. And you look at the Kenyan government, I mean, they've gone out and given iPads to some of the primary schools, and they're almost at the forefront of technology. So the appetite for government to actually open up and actually invest in those sectors becomes the barrier. So you find that some other governments in African countries actually don't want the internet, because I think they've seen how powerful the internet is. I mean, the internet overthrows government. So it sometimes depends on the appetite of the government to actually roll out the infrastructure so people can start using it. So every country is at different levels, and at the moment it's driven really by the interest of government to actually give access and build the infrastructure so people can access the internet.
And certainly we hope to see technology grow more. Veli, thanks for your time and wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much, Khosi.
That's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. Until next time, take care.